The line remains open, a filament humming with the world's incessant call, and in this constant state of reception, where does the self reside? Is it in the echo of another's need? The swift reply? The digitally tethered soul? A phantom limb, this availability, twitching even in silence, anticipating the next summons. We offer ourselves as conduits, yet forget the source must replenish. The cost, then, is not merely time, but the slow, almost imperceptible erosion of the inner sanctum, that quiet, unlit room where the untranslated heart still beats. What symphony of self is muted when the receiver is never hung up, when the performance of openness becomes the only tune we know how to play? The self perhaps becomes a rumor, a story told by others, its original voice thinned to a whisper beneath the chorus of demands. This perpetual accessibility, a modern virtue worn like a badge, what does it truly connect us to? A web of fleeting demands, perhaps, a surface skimmed 1,000 times a day, yet rarely plumbed. Is there a hidden terror beneath this openness? A fear of the silence that ensues when the notifications cease, a dread of confronting the unadorned self? We mistake the hum of constant contact for the warmth of genuine presence, the echo for the voice. The cost accumulates in these missed depths, in the unexamined moments that slip away, sacrificed to the altar of immediate response. Always on, always there, yet perhaps never truly arriving in any single moment, any single interaction, with the fullness of a being that has known the restorative embrace of its own solitude. The map of connection widens, but the territory of the soul may be shrinking. Is there a point at which the self, endlessly offered, begins to feel less like a gift and more like a utility, a service perpetually running in the background of other lives? This currency of attention, freely dispensed at every beck and call, devalues the very essence it springs from. The inner wellspring, once abundant, risks becoming a shallow pool, reflecting only the fleeting faces that peer in, demanding their share. One becomes a station, a point of transit, rather than a destination in oneself. And what of the unspoken expectation that this availability implies an infinite capacity? The spirit, however, is not a machine. It requires its seasons, its fallow periods, its sacred idleness. To deny this rhythm is to court a peculiar kind of emptiness, the hollowness of a space that is always occupied, yet never truly inhabited by its rightful owner. Consider the slow curdling of spontaneity, the way authentic impulse hesitates when the stage is perpetually set, the audience always assembled. If every thought, every potential moment of solitude is already mortgaged to the possibility of an incoming demand, where does the unscripted self take refuge? This constant vigilance, this readiness to engage, can subtly sculpt us into more predictable, more palatable versions of ourselves, smoothing over the inconvenient textures of our inner wilderness. The wild, untamed thoughts, the idiosyncratic insights that bloom only in undisturbed quiet, do they wither on the vine, deemed unsuitable for immediate broadcast? The price of being ever present for others might be an increasing absence from the unpredictable currents of our own deeper nature, a trade-off where the genuine is bartered for the accessible. And so, the inner landscape, once a place of discovery, risks becoming a neatly tended garden, cultivated chiefly for the gaze of others. Is there a subtle vanity in this ceaseless dance of availability, a quiet whisper that tells us our constant presence is indispensable? We become the central node in a self-made network of dependencies, and the hum of its demands can be mistaken for the song of our own importance. Yet, what if this very indispensability is a gilded cage, its bars forged from the fear of not being needed, of discovering our own quiet center to be more fulfilling than the periphery of others' lives? The true weight of a soul is perhaps measured not in the multitude of its connections, but in the depth of its solitude, the resonance it finds when the world is temporarily silenced. This relentless accessibility, then, might be a flight from a more profound, more challenging encounter, the encounter with an unadorned self, stripped of its roles and its audience, facing the vastness within. The cost might be the missed opportunity to discover that our significance is not contingent on our responsiveness. And what of the vessel, the body, that houses this perpetually alert mind? Does it not register the cost in the subtle tremor of an ever-taut nervous system, in the shallowness of breath caught in anticipation of the next ping, the next demand? This state of readiness, a low hum of vigilance, extracts its price ounce by ounce from our physical reserves, often unnoticed until exhaustion plants its flag firmly in our depleted lands. The wisdom of the flesh, its inherent rhythms of activity and repose, its clear signals for retreat and replenishment, these are often drowned out by the louder, more insistent calls from the external world, amplified by the technology of instant connection. We override the body's plea for stillness, for disconnection, believing our availability to be a function of will alone. But the organism remembers. It keeps a silent tally of these transgressions against its nature, and the cost may manifest in ways the ever-active mind cannot easily dismiss or rationalize away. This unwavering accessibility, does it truly nurture the bonds it aims to serve, or does it weave a delicate web of expectation, where presence becomes an obligation rather than a chosen offering? When the door is always ajar, the threshold may lose its sanctity. The assumption of constant access can breed a subtle form of taking for granted, diminishing the perceived value of one's time and attention. Perhaps true intimacy thrives not on ceaseless contact, but on the quality of presence offered in moments of genuine, undistracted engagement, moments that are themselves nourished by periods of individual retreat and reflection. If one is perpetually drained, a well from which all may draw without limit, what remains to be given that is truly vital, truly imbued with the essence of a refreshed spirit? The cost might be found in relationships that feel broad yet shallow, maintained by the mechanics of availability rather than the unpredictable, profound currents of authentic human connection. What becomes of the sacred pause, the inviolable moment, in a life structured around perpetual openness? If the temple of the self has no doors that can be temporarily barred against the mundane, does it not risk becoming just another thoroughfare, indistinguishable from the marketplace outside? The capacity for deep contemplation, for the slow, unhurried unfolding of an idea, for the very act of being without doing, these are fragile ecosystems, easily disturbed by the tremor of an incoming signal. This constant porosity blurs the lines between the essential and the trivial, the chosen engagement and the imposed interruption. Is there a cost in this leveling of all moments to the same plane of potential demand? A subtle desacralization of inner time? Perhaps the richness of experience, the texture of a life lived with intention, depends on these carefully guarded enclaves of non-availability, where the soul can converse with itself, undisturbed by the world's endless chatter. In this relentless state of outward-facing readiness, what happens to the quiet loom where personal narrative is woven? If life becomes a series of fragmented responses to external pings, rather than a thoughtfully curated tapestry of experience, does the thread of cohesive meaning begin to fray? Memory itself requires fallow periods, moments of detached reflection, to properly embed and integrate the raw data of our days. When we are always on, always reacting, we risk becoming chroniclers of 1,000 fleeting interactions, yet poor authors of our own deeper story. The cost, then, may be a sense of a life lived at the surface, a collection of unexamined moments that fail to coalesce into a resonant personal mythology. To be perpetually available to others might mean becoming increasingly unavailable to the vital internal work of meaning-making, of transforming mere happening into lived, understood experience. The narrative of the self, under such conditions, risks becoming a borrowed script rather than an original composition. Perhaps, then, the most profound act in an always-on world is the deliberate cultivation of unavailability, a conscious, unapologetic drawing of boundaries around one's time and attention. Is there not a quiet rebellion in the decision to sometimes be unreachable, to let the world's demands wait while the inner well replenishes? This choice is not born of misanthropy or disregard, but from a deeper understanding that true presence requires a preceding absence, a period of gathering oneself. To disappoint the expectation of immediacy might be the price for offering something more substantial later: a focused mind, a rested spirit, an authentic engagement. The courage to be occasionally unavailable is thus a testament to self-regard, and paradoxically a gift to others. The promise that when one does connect, it is with the fullness of a being that has not been scattered to the winds of endless interruption. It is an assertion that one's inner life is not a public utility, but a sovereign territory, visited by invitation, not by demand. What restless spirit fuels this compulsion to be perpetually within reach? This fear of the unread message, the unanswered call? Could it be a thinly veiled anxiety, a dread of insignificance that whispers we must remain tethered lest we be forgotten, passed over, deemed irrelevant in the swift current of affairs? This constant monitoring, this state of low-grade alert, It is a tax on the soul, paid daily, for the perceived benefit of staying in the loop. Yet the loop itself may be a dizzying circuit of mostly ephemeral concerns. The cost is not just in the moments surrendered, but in the pervasive thrum of apprehension that one might miss something crucial, something that validates one's place. But what if the truly crucial encounters are those that require us to be temporarily unavailable to the noise, to cultivate an inner stillness so profound that it no longer needs the echo of external validation to know its own worth? The pursuit of constant connection might then be a chasing of ghosts, a distraction from the more pressing need to connect with the quiet, unwavering presence within. The promise of constant availability often carries an implicit vow of presence. Yet how genuine can this presence be when attention is perpetually fragmented, one ear always cocked for the digital summons? True presence is a full-bodied immersion, a convergence of mind and senses in a singular point of focus. But the state of being always on cultivates a shallow, skimming awareness, a mind conditioned to dart from one stimulus to the next. The cost, then, is the profound dilution of our capacity to truly listen, to truly see, to truly be with another or with an experience in its undiluted entirety. We may be physically accessible, a node in the network, yet our core being remains elusive, shielded by layers of distraction. What is the value of an open line if the voice that answers is hollowed out, its attention already straying to the next potential call? Perhaps the deepest cost lies in this subtle betrayal of the present moment, sacrificed for the ceaseless anticipation of a future that is always interrupting, never quite arriving. This ceaseless state of alert, of being poised to respond, often masquerades as productivity, a flurry of digital handshakes and swift replies. We measure our days in tasks cleared, messages answered, our availability a testament to our engagement with the world's work. Yet, is this hurried responsiveness truly synonymous with fruitful labor, with the kind of deep, resonant creation that emerges from undisturbed concentration? The cost might be the sacrifice of the profound for the immediate, the significant for the merely urgent. True insight, genuine artistry, the architecting of meaningful change. These often demand vast, quiet landscapes of time, spaces where the mind can roam untethered, wrestle with complexity, and give birth to novelty. To be always available is to be always interruptible. And in that fractured landscape, the seeds of deeper contributions may struggle to find purchase, their delicate roots constantly disturbed by the tremors of incoming demands. The hum of constant activity can drown out the silent call to more substantial, more solitary forms of making. Consider the subtle erosion of an intrinsic freedom when the self is perpetually leashed to the network of expectation. Though these tethers may be willingly worn, embraced as tools of connection and efficiency, do they not, thread by thread, weave a cage around the spirit's innate desire to roam unbeckoned? The liberation promised by instantaneous communication may carry a hidden clause, a surrender of that quiet sovereignty, the right to be temporarily lost to the world, to be simply, irresponsibly, elsewhere. This unspoken contract of constant availability, what does it demand in return for its conveniences? Perhaps a piece of that untamed self, the one that thrives in unobserved moments, that draws breath from the ability to choose solitude without explanation. The cost, then, is not merely of time or focus, but of a certain wildness, a fundamental liberty of being that predates the digital call and response. It is the quiet diminishment of the space where one can exist purely for oneself, untracked, unsummoned, and utterly free. Ultimately, the cost of always being available is tallied in the currency of the soul, in moments of unlived life, in depths unplumbed, in the silencing of the inner voice beneath the clamor of the external. Yet this is not an inescapable fate, but rather the outcome of a path chosen, often unconsciously. What if a different availability could be reclaimed? An availability, first, to the subtle murmurs of one's own being, to the restorative quiet that allows wisdom to surface, to the slow, sacred unfolding of a self not perpetually on demand. Perhaps the true art lies not in mastering the tools of constant connection, but in mastering the art of disconnection, not in being always accessible to the world, but in becoming radically accessible to oneself. For only from that replenished wellspring can we offer a presence that is not merely a reaction, but a genuine life-giving flow. What, then, is the cost of not cultivating this deeper, more discerning availability.